Deadpan Ghosts is a horror media podcast and as such may feature discussion of mature or disturbing subject matter. A full list of content warnings for this episode can be found in the description. Hi, welcome to Deadpan Ghosts, a horror media podcast hosted by two ghoulish goofs, Vernon and their aghast co-host, Jonathan. And today we are covering the 1959 gimmick horror movie House on Haunted Hill. Vernon, what did you think of this movie?
Wow, thank you, Jonathan. Well, yeah, I just floated out of the room in which the people were haunting watch movies. And certainly when I floated in, I was confident I had not seen this movie, or this version of this movie. But the moment it began, I realized I had seen it as a child.
Wow, yeah.
This is one of those movies that my mom's side of the family is really fond of. She has older brothers, and this came out at the right time, I suppose.
Wow.
And I was shown it by my family, I now realize, as if it was the pinnacle of all things good and horrifying. The immediate, it opens with screams, and moans and chain rattling.
The chain rattling is good.
And I recognized it immediately, and I was like, oh, these sounds have been imprinted on me.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of these screams have been reused. I think this movie entered the public domain at some point.
Yeah, I think that they used a chain of 2 screams in a row, probably 6 to 7 times, making for a total of 14 to 15 screams.
Right.
I did count them.
But, right, because...
Well, they started right away, and so I must start right away. By saying I'm super sound sensitive, and as a ghost, I'm even more sound sensitive.
Of course.
And the screaming, this is like the classic Hollywood scream queen spectacular.
Oh yeah, so it's pretty much all throughout, and multiple screams from multiple actresses. They're great scream queens.
Yeah.
And so you have to suffer through really high-pitched shrieks, unfortunately.
And there were plenty of jump scares that were accompanied with full orchestral
jump scare music.
Jump scare music.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, but there was one theme tune, like a vocalization throughout the movie that I loved, that I totally remembered, and, I thought worked really well, actually.
Yeah, the main theme.
Yeah, it's like a lady singing, kinda, but like ghost, like, ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know, I can't really do it.
Ghostly singing, we're a fan of ghostly singing. That theme is named after the movie House on Haunted Hill, and it's by 2 Richards, Richard Kane and Richard Loring. So that's kind of neat.
That is neat.
But yeah, I agree that it's pretty good. It's pretty, haunting and moody in a kind of charming 1950s way, but certainly unique, and I feel like I've heard it a bunch of times, but I don't think it's actually generic. Some of the music in this is a little bit...
I wouldn't use the word generic.
Right. But a good theme is always nice to have. And with this movie, of course, it's rather old. It's black and white. We watched the black and white version. We didn't bother with the recolorized version.
Right. We did not try that.
This is the oldest movie that we've talked about so far on the cast. How do you think it holds up?
I think I was pretty excited to watch it before I realized that I was familiar with it. But even as soon as I realized, I still was mostly a blank slate in which I didn't know what the results were going to be. I couldn't remember what happened, really.
Yeah.
So I was still thoroughly on the edge of my seat, and I was expecting an all-time classic ghost movie.
For sure.
I think I got that.
Yeah, we could talk about
It was a quick watch.
Super tight.
It was An hour and 15 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly there's no way we could talk for that long.
No, no. Well,
or longer
we'll,
about the movie.
no, we'll
That
try.
would be
That would be
hysterical.
insane. It's funny though. The longest we've talked about a movie so far is Ghostbusters. We just had a lot to say about those guys.
Yeah, that makes sense. I said the word hysterical as a transition to the fact
Oh
that
yeah, say they call women hysterical a lot in this
yeah,
movie.
that's a big crux of this movie.
It is.
A lot of what goes down is said to, be because of hysteria, and I so much so that I just kept count. It was 9 times, which
Is a lot.
felt like a lot while I was watching.
Well, it was definitely very much a thing in that era. You couldn't express very much at all as a woman without being accused of hysteria, is what it seems like.
Right, so when ghosts are concerned,
Yeah.
when it's seeing something like a ghost in the ghost house we were all invited to,
For sure. Then you're
you're
definitely
hysterical.
Mhm.
But it was the psychiatrist man
Right.
who's all like, I'm a psychiatrist.
Yeah, okay, so you've got this interesting experience with this movie where you realized immediately that you have seen it. I think for me, also the case. It was mostly fresh, and I remembered, honestly, very little. I remembered a skeleton, and I remembered that that Vincent Price was in it, and that he was just so awesome. This is my Vincent Price introduction, actually, this movie, and I've really admired him ever since. Seeing this as a young boy when I was still alive, naturally, and
Naturally.
now that I'm dead, I think I have even more of a connection to Vincent Price. He really, really laid on the spooky vibes. He was really good at that specifically. His voice really is what typecasted him, right? He's got this really buttery but vaguely kind of creepy voice when he leans into it, right?
Yeah, his voice is fantastic. I think his performance is the whole heart of the movie, in which it's a mystery. So his what you think about him and what you think, where you think the plot's going, is kind of the whole why it works and why it doesn't. And I think it does work.
Yeah.
Him being mysterious and what is it? What is his intentions?
Right.
What are his intentions?
Well, remembering, of course, only that Vincent Price was in this movie and how awesome he was struck me as funny watching it this time, because I don't know if awesome is the word that I would choose to describe his character, Frederick Loren.
No, I think he was the bad guy. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's, he's pretty much the person on whom a lot of this rests, I think. And we can get more into it, but we should introduce at this point the guests, the 5 guests who are coming to the house on the haunted hill.
Yes, let's see. I wrote down their occupations, not their names, and so the first they come in a bunch of cars, like hearses, maybe.
Yes. And so each of these people, before you begin, has been contacted by Vincent Price's character, Frederick Loren. They've been offered a chance to win $10,000 by staying at this haunted house, which he is renting with his wife, Annabelle Loren, played by Carol Omart. And basically he's throwing a party for her. It is told to us in the beginning. We get some beginning narration from...
Yeah, by his face. Just like
Yeah.
his face comes on screen.
Yeah, just by
He's
Vincent
staring right at us.
Vincent Price breaking the fourth wall, just telling us what's going down. And he's invited 5 guests to come and get a chance to win this $10,000 if they can spend the night here in this haunted house. Right? Okay. So
Okay, sounds good. $10,000 is a lot of money right now. even as a ghost, I could use it. And so back then, I have to, yeah, okay.
I could imagine, yeah, even. And they make a big deal out of it too when they get there.
It's all about the money.
All of the guests, for sure.
All right, you got the pilot man.
Yes,
and he's
first
also
up.
young and handsome.
That is Lance Schroeder, the character, played by Richard Long. And he's got a real, kind of like a Jim Kirk energy, if I'm being honest, except I think he's a better actor also.
Wow, scathing review of James T. Kirk from Star Trek?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, moving on. The second one introduced is this writer who wants to prove that ghosts are real, and she's like a blonde woman who's maybe just a hair older than some of the younger characters. And the fact that she wants to prove ghosts are real is never mentioned again in the rest of the movie.
That's
past
right.
her introduction narration.
That's
and
right.
I kept wondering when she was going to bring it up.
Yeah, so you were talking about the ostensibly older woman, right?
Yeah, just technically.
Yeah, Ruth Bridges, played by Julie Mitchum. And I think also she is described as having gambling debts, right? Something like that.
Oh yeah, she's desperate. She's like, is the money going to be delivered immediately?
Yeah, that's right. And so next up we have
it was the owner of the building, and this was kind of there was a head before Vincent Price's head that appeared.
Right.
And it's this guy.
He's the first to pop up.
Yeah.
Watson Pritchard, played by Elisha Cook Jr.
Sounds good.
I've never seen this spelling of it's either Alicia or Elisha, but he has been in like a ton of stuff, classic stuff. He's got a really great face. I think he lays it on a little thick in this movie, but he's...
Oh, no, he's staring you down the barrel. It's I mean, it was very memorable from as a kid, just him. Okay, so he inherited this house or owns this house, but has never really, he's only been there once, and he had a traumatic experience in which somebody killed his brother, I think.
Right, well, his brother had a wife, and he was involved, it is implied, in a relationship with his wife's sister. And so his wife, in a jealous rage, in this house, killed this guy's brother and her own sister. And
yeah, I just watched it, but yeah, exactly. It's yes,
right,
horrible.
That is 2 of 7 murders that have taken place in the home. Is that right?
Right, they make a big deal, yeah, or he does specifically. He's like the source of a lot of the knowledge because he's the technical owner of the house.
Yeah, and he rented it out to Frederick Loren, but as he explains, he doesn't really know Frederick because Frederick contacted him through mail to rent the house.
Right.
So he's unassociated. Every guest at this party is unassociated with the Lorens. They're basically strangers, and they've been offered a chance to win this money, and they're all kind of suspicious about, why that might be, but they're not, they all have a reason not to pass up this chance, right? And so...
Right. The fourth man
right.
is the psychiatrist.
Yes. Dr. David Trent, played by Alan Marshall. He is our kind of logic and reason lover in this movie, the one who comes in and is like, you don't seriously believe in this ghost shit, do you? Silly woman. She must be having hysteria.
Yeah. And that the woman that he is most often claiming is hysteric is the last person who is the character. It was Nora.
Yes, Nora Manning, played by Carolyn Craig. She's our main scream queen for this one.
Yeah.
She gets most of the screams. Although you mentioned it's largely the same screen used over and over again.
I think by the end, I think I that's what it seems like.
Yeah, well, maybe so. It's a good take, though, if that's the case.
Yeah. She's somebody who works for one of Vincent Price's companies, and she just needs the money.
Yeah, he said he picked her because she could use the money the most out of all the thousands of his employees.
The whole early part of this movie is all about just why is he doing this? What is going on? What are his motivations? Why would he offer this amount of money for this odd experience to spend the night in a ghost house? It's all very just building suspicion.
Right, right. So the guests arrive at this party, and almost immediately, one of the suspicious things that happens is that a chandelier immediately falls right after the doors close on their own behind the guests as they come in. They're like, who closed that door? And then a chandelier falls, and it almost kills Nora Manning right at the beginning.
Yeah. And as a ghost, I was very like, oh, these ghosts are moving things. They're doing things right away.
That's right.
That chandelier's been up there for 30 years.
Yeah, this haunting is, it's really getting...
And they spent it right here.
Really getting started right off the bat. So, like, Frederick Loren, our old pal Vincent, he's, like, hanging around and, like, watching this go down. You know, some of the other guests snatch Nora away from the chandelier, and they calm her down. But he slinks back into his room where his wife, Annabelle Loren, is staying, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, our party is off to a great start, honey. The chandelier almost killed one of the guests. You know? She's sitting in front of a mirror, like brushing her hair, and am I correct that she's kind of like brushing her hair and getting ready?
She is getting ready, but like not for the party. She doesn't really want anything to do with him.
Right, well, it's the 50s. It's the 50s, so women, they brush their hair for bed.
Maybe. Oh, yeah, she might have been in her nightgown stuff. But he was like, yeah, you're not dressed. You're not ready. But she doesn't want to go to the party.
Yeah. He says it's her party, her idea, right? But she seems to contest that. She's like, well, it was your idea to invite all these different people.
Yeah,
she doesn't want to...
mysterious.
Yeah, she doesn't want to have anything to do with it now that these people are arriving. She doesn't really know what her husband is up to, it seems.
He has had many wives, it's said. Like, this is his fourth wife, and the other three have died of mysterious circumstances.
That's right.
And this woman wants, or he implies that she wants the money, his money, all of it. Mm-hmm. And she kind of doesn't deny that.
That's right.
But he's also like whack and kind of creepy around her, and so you want her to get out of the situation.
She describes him as jealous, like insanely jealous and very controlling. And we get that vibe, you know. He, like, possessively, like, puts his arms around her shoulders and, like, squeezes pretty tight, you know.
Yeah.
And
it seems implied that he invited the pilot there maybe to, like, tempt his wife.
Possibly.
And make, give a reason why. I don't know. It's kind of, as the thing goes on, it's like, is he trying to kill her? It seems like... I was thinking that he invited everybody there to blame one of them for the murder of his wife.
Right. Yeah, I think that Vincent Price plays Frederick Loren well, where we don't really know how to feel about this guy. He's putting off quite a bad vibe.
Yeah, in that scene, he shakes a champagne bottle, and... she says, don't do that. I hate it when you do that. And he's like, why? It might explode. Like, he says it gleefully and evilly. Right. And he starts pointing it at her like a horribly abusive madman. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
and she says, I wrote it down in my mental ghost notes. She says, the only ghoul in this house is you.
Oh.
I like that. I like that one.
He also says about the wine bottle, it would make a great headline.
Yeah, Playboy.
Yeah, Playboy kills wife with a champagne bottle cork. They've got a whack relationship.
It's interesting that it's like their relationship, but it's not in their home. It's they rented this supposedly haunted house to host this party.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of lost in this scary place, even though they're, their relationship is at the core of the issue.
Right. The only one who's really not lost is Watson Pritchard, of course, played by Elisha Cook again. And he doesn't know everything there is to know about the house, but he does give a little tour. And he knows a lot about the murders that took place in the house. He, of course, is related to one of the people that was murdered there. And because of that, he only stayed one night, as we talked about. But now he's back, and we get a couple of mentions that he's a drunk, that he has a problem with drinking. Possibly.
And then he's drinking the whole time.
He is. He's also drinking the whole time, and he staggers a lot.
And gets more and more... he plays progressively more drunk.
And he sweats a lot. But he is rambling on about ghosts the whole time, and how the ghosts, they want to take us with them and make more of them, make us join them.
Yeah.
And so he takes him on a little tour, and he points out this one spot on the ceiling. He's like, look at this blood spot on the ceiling. This is where one of the murders happened. And then Ruth Bridges, who's the older woman guest, played by Julie Mitchum.
She's a journalist.
That's right.
Who wants to prove ghosts are real.
And the gambler.
But she's also a gambler.
Yeah, and the blood drips on her hand. They're like, don't stand under it. And then all of a sudden blood is dripping on her hand, and she's like, oh my god.
I loved that.
Yeah, and then David Trent, the guy who is the doctor, he's like, oh, what are you talking about? Could just be a leaky roof. But she's like, oh, I'm sure that's what it is. And she wipes it off.
Yeah.
And so they move on.
Vincent Price or the owner, Dave, the other...
Watson Pritchard.
Whatever the guy's... Yes, Watson Pritchard. I think he says like the blood marks you, like the ghosts have marked you.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
pretty good.
But then the tour leads them down to the wine cellar.
That's
and
right.
They tell this one story of one of the murders that involved a guy dumping his wife like in a thing of acid.
Yes. He was experimenting with wines.
Yeah.
He filled the one of the wine pits with acid, and he dumped his wife in the acid.
As he cranks this big wheel and opens up this big vat of acid. And they're like, there's not still acid in there, is there?
Right. Ruth Bridges almost falls into it. They're like, oh, thank God you didn't fall in. And then it's like, wait. But there's no way, right?
He gets a rat trap and throws a rat in it, and it becomes a skeleton rat.
It's the fakest little toy rat I've ever seen, too.
And so when they introduce vat of acid in the basement, it became, Chekhov's vat of acid. Like, when is this gonna come up again? This has got a factor.
It's funny you mention that because there's 7 guns in this movie too, but
right.
We'll get into that.
Do they shoot them? I don't remember if a gun could. Oh wait, maybe
a gun gets shot. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the reveal that there's still acid in this pit is something else.
Right. So everybody leaves.
They pretty much move on. Yeah, except for Nora Manning and Lance Schroeder, the jet pilot, who stay behind.
Right, he holds her back, and she's like, no, we're gonna continue on with the group, but he stops the door.
Yeah, he's like,
really great stuff.
He's like, well, hold on now, I'm suspicious, aren't you?
Yeah, and I guess she was suspicious.
For sure.
They talk about the stuff.
Yeah, they say, would a millionaire really want to part with $10,000? I don't think there's really some ghost stuff going on. I think that they're trying as hard as they can to spook us, etc. Also, there's some questioning done into do you know this guy? I don't know this guy. And she's like, no, I don't know this guy. And he's like, interesting. Why are we here? Why the 5 of us? And so that's questioned a little bit. I think that the reason Vincent Price gives earlier in the scene with his wife is that he wanted to bring a good assortment of types of people together to see how they would respond to this. Who's brave enough? What type of person is brave enough to spend the night here for the $10,000? That's the reasoning he gives.
Yeah.
But they're not privy to that, and they're pretty
No.
suspicious of it all. And so they hang around and they're kind of investigating.
And that's when the first big ghost thing happens.
That's right.
Lance the pilot gets trapped in a different room, like a door shuts mysteriously.
Yeah, it
and
shuts
he
on
bonks
its
his
own.
head.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of doors shutting on their own, so that's interesting.
For sure.
And then Nora gets a big view of this ghost, and it's like super scary.
Yeah, super scary old woman ghost.
Yeah. If I was a kid in the 50s, I would not forget this
For
for the
sure.
rest of my life.
It's a good coming out of the shadows, really eerily kind of floating effects. She's got a long black dress, so you can't really see what's going on.
Yeah, and she has white eyes and like
Mhm.
white hair, and she's like, ah, like, you can see me. I'm like going, ah.
And I thought it was really good. And then she retreats back into the darkness the same way she came, and
floats back.
that's when I started laughing a little bit.
I laughed, but I mean, there was also some awkward cuts. But it was great. I thought it was that old lady was really scary.
Right. And so Nora
And
Manning's
whew,
she's been pounding on the door like, Lance, what happened? Are you okay? He's out, so he can't hear her. And we haven't seen what happened to him yet. But she runs off because she's seen this ghost. And she busts into the foyer where everyone is hanging out, and she's like, "You've got to help me. I've lost Lance, and I saw a ghost." Immediately, she's like, "I saw a ghost." Because, we're at this haunted house.
yeah,
She might as well come out with it.
I believe it.
For sure. But Dr. David Trim is immediately like, "You see what I mean?" Because he's already been talking about hysteria.
This is a classic case of hysteria. She's probably hysterical.
Put a pin in that. In any case, Watson Pritchard, he's like, "Oh," and they all go down there. There's no ghost, of course, once they get down there. And she runs to the door, and she's like, "We're going to have to break this door down. It was locked." But it just opens as soon as she pulls the handle. Everyone's like, "It was locked, huh?" And they go in there, and of course, Lance Schroeder is just lying on the floor. He's had a bump on the head, and he's like, "Oh, I must have bumped my head on something." And then David Trent, who says, "Oh, you couldn't have bumped your head on anything in here unless you walked straight into the wall, because there's nothing in the room. It's just like a square room with nothing in it."
Yeah, the most empty room you could ever have.
There's a lip that he could have tripped on, but other than that, he's pretty sure that something hit him in the head, actually. So that's interesting.
Yeah, very suspicious, very suspicious.
There's a lot of suspicious things going on here.
Yeah, Nora is very hysterical, and she's running. She's kind of on her own again, and there's really big shadows on her, like shadows of bars. All the windows are barred. There's this whole plot point where you guys can leave at midnight when the caretakers leave, but after that you can't leave until morning.
Right.
So that's your last chance to go. And so she's walking down this hallway, and there's a jump scare hand that comes out of the side of the frame.
Right.
And goes around her mouth to stop her from screaming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be the caretaker man. The introduction of caretaker man.
Jonas Slides, played by Howard Hoffman. He says to her, "Come with us before he kills you," or before he tries to kill you. And she screams and runs away. She runs back to the party, and she's like, "I saw another ghost." But it's pretty immediately cleared up when a door comes open, and Jonas is standing by the old lady ghost, quote unquote, that we saw earlier, who happens to just be his wife. And
his blind old wife.
And so Vincent Price is like, "This is just Jonas Slides and his wife. They're the caretakers that were mentioned earlier." And it's like, oh, the caretakers, of course.
I was surprised. I really thought that old lady was had a really iconic ghost design. I was like, what? Not real, fake.
Yeah,
Dang it.
this is one of those movies where you're going to be wondering whether there's ghostly stuff going on or not. Really, what this movie truly is a kind of Agatha Christie style mystery film, right? Where
Hmm.
we need to figure out these people's motivations and try to figure out what's happening with the clues that we've got. So
Right.
there's a lot of things that are set up and then paid off in fun ways, like the caretakers being mentioned, and then, oh, it turns out those ghosts Nora saw were just Jonas Slides and his wife. And I like she's not even given a name. It's his wife, uh, who's of course blind, and they're pretty much like out the door after that. Like they make a big thing of y'all can leave up until midnight, but then the caretakers leave early, which was
Yeah.
pretty funny to me. Like Jonas put his hand on Nora's mouth and was like, "Come with us." But then like they're just gone. I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of like it's a maybe it is a comedy a little bit.
Well, for the 50s, it's all kind of relative.
Hmm.
Um, there certainly are funny lines in this film, and like, I shudder to think this, but I think that a lot of the man and wife hate each other stuff probably got laughs from audiences out of the day.
Yeah, Vincent Price at one point says, "What husband hasn't thought of killing his wife and hasn't had a
Hmm.
million chances to do it in which he could totally get away with it too?" It was
Right.
it was it was crazy. And everybody's like, "Oh yeah, you make good comments."
For sure. So, at this point in the movie, Nora is freaking out and she doesn't want to stay here anymore. Even though the ghosts have been revealed to just be the caretakers, she's still really freaking out. She doesn't want to stay. But immediately they're all trapped there. So now they can't get out because there's bars on the windows, the doors made of steel, etc.
Nora finds a head
Right. She finds a head in her suitcase.
because that was one of the things the owner guy had. I'll never remember any of these names.
It's okay.
I don't tell me. Just stop telling me the names.
Just go
Uh,
for it.
the owner, he says that one of the murders involved cutting off heads, but we never found the heads.
I think it was actually his brother
That's horrible.
and the woman he was having an affair with. I think it was their heads. And so she sees that and she comes downstairs. She's like,
You want to see a ghost? Yeah, you want to see some heads? I'll show you some heads.
yeah. And she brings him up there. But of course, once they get up there, there's no head in the
There's no
suitcase.
head.
Nora, you're great. Are you sure you're not suffering from a little bit of hysteria right now? And so she like is like, leave me alone. None of y'all believe me. And Dr. David Trent offers her a sedative. She doesn't want to take it, but they leave her alone. Dr. David Trent is like, I really wish she would have taken that sedative. I really think that she is in a very sensitive place right now. I think she's
Have you
suffering
heard of the
from
word
I
hysterical?
think she's suffering from some hysteria, maybe a
Some
little bit.
form of hysterics.
And so what we need to do is not terrify her anymore. And he looks over at Vincent Price. He's like, "You
You
understand?"
stop doing this.
Yeah,
Stop scaring her, Vincent Price.
that's right. So everybody is suspicious of Vincent Price. They all pretty much go to their rooms and
Yeah, I think it's in the night when you don't know where anybody is that a murder takes place.
for sure. Well, we should talk a little bit about Annabelle Loren here.
Vincent Price's wife.
Yeah, she's Vincent Price's wife, of course. And while everyone's gone off to their rooms, she takes a moment to meet up with both Nora Manning and Lance Schroeder. She meets up with Nora, and she's kind of like, "Why did my husband invite you here?" And she's like, "I don't really know." She's like, "I work for him." But Annabelle is like, "Right. So why you? And she kind of implies that Nora is in danger and that maybe Frederick Loren is planning something, but she doesn't know what. And so then she goes and meets Lance Schroeder. She tells him basically the same thing, and she tells him about Frederick Loren's previous wives. One of them just disappeared. Two of them died from heart attacks in their early 20s. Wink, wink, you know. And so, like...
Yeah, everybody was winking in the scene.
Yeah, everybody was winking. And, and so she's, like, kind of putting her charms on him. He feels like the strong, man. He's like, I'll help you out, beautiful lady. You can see it in his face the first time he sees her. He's like smitten. He's like, oh, this is Vincent Price's wife. Well, hello. I was kind of getting along with Nora, but how are you? And so he's like, I'm suspicious too, but I'll help you out, babe. And I'm gonna figure out what's going on here. He leaves, the plot progresses, and...
It progresses when a murder takes place.
And the murder victim is Annabelle Loren. A scream is heard.
At first you think it's Nora, and you're from the pilot's perspective, and he's like, oh no, Nora hung herself?
Right, because he went into her room and she wasn't there anymore. Right?
Yeah, but he found a head in the closet and he grabbed it with his hands and he was holding a head in his hands.
Yeah, and so he rushes down to Watson Pritchard, who's like still getting drunk in the foyer, and he's like got a butcher knife with him.
Yeah, the knife that may have killed the brother thing.
That's right.
Oh my god!
And so Lance is like holding this head in his hand, and he's like, where's Nora? And Watson Pritchard is like talking crazy. He's like, they got to her.
It's too late.
It's too late. You can't do anything about it. Almost like he had something to do with it, because the movie wants you to be suspicious of everyone. But he's also like holding his butcher knife like directly at Lance. He's like kind of got it in his lap, but he's like got it pointed straight up at him.
Yeah. I wasn't suspicious of him. I liked him the most.
For sure. But I want to point out how like vaguely threatening he comes off here, how the movie kind of wants you to be thinking, maybe anyone could have done this. But you hear a scream, and Elisha Cook wasn't anywhere near it when it happened, so it kind of already... They want you to think he did it for a split second, but then it kind of seems like that's out the window, because he's in the other room when whatever happens to Annabelle happens. And she, of course, is hanged, and it doesn't seem like there's anything, as they explain later, for her to have like jumped off of, so it couldn't have been a suicide, they determined. It had to have been a murder.
Right. And Vincent Price is playing it like he didn't do it, and the audience is supposed to feel that. It's like,
for sure,
I would think it's you, but he's like, one of you must have done this.
Yeah.
As if he suddenly doesn't believe in ghosts, even though he's been joking about ghosts being real the whole night.
That's true.
Like, there's no way. There's only us here.
That is
One
true.
of you must be the murderer. And I didn't believe him. I'm like, dude, there's going to be ghosts in this house, and they're killing people.
Yeah, it could be. Could be.
I mean, I don't think ghosts do that. They don't. But I was just assuming that's how ghosts work in this world.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of bad ghosts in horror movies.
Okay. This scene where it's like one of you, when it becomes the Agatha Christie, is it 50 minutes in? Okay?
Yeah.
They only had 25 more minutes.
Yeah, and so the plot, it goes pretty quickly, unravels pretty quickly after this point, but basically nobody trusts each other, and Vincent Price is like, one of you killed my wife, and Dr. David Trent is like, but you probably killed your wife.
Yeah, but you did it, right? He's like, yeah, but what about you?
None of us know your wife. You're the only one with a reason to kill your wife. And this is when he gets up and he says, who hasn't thought about killing their wife? And all the men in the 50s are like...
yeah, preach into the choir, Vincent Price.
Of course. And so with all this out the way, all this up in the air, Vincent Price gets out 7 guns that are in little coffins.
Yeah, they introduced guns. And the psychiatrist was even like, I don't need a gun. It's more dangerous if when Nora had mistaken the blind woman for a ghost, if she had a gun, she could have shot her.
Yeah.
Is what the psychiatrist said. And then later he shows up with a gun, and I didn't understand. I was like, what? I thought you said you didn't want a gun.
Yeah. They're very confident. And maybe we can start to unveil the secret plot here. So,
yeah, when did they unveil the secret plot? I was keeping track of the dots that appear in the corner of the screen to signal to the projectionist to switch the reels.
Oh yeah, that's
because
there's a lot of those.
Always, I love the there was 3 because of the number. There was 3 reels, but
for sure.
Yeah. They spend a while. Like Vincent Price is over her body in the bedroom, and he's like upset, and you're wondering who did it.
Yeah, but he's also still like insulting her, even though she's dead. He's like, so greedy, so cold. It's like, Jesus Christ, dude.
He's really doing a great job at being, pretty diabolical.
He seems diabolical the whole time. Yeah. And he
still is. If we're unveiling,
for sure is diabolical. I mean, this is a diabolical plot he set up. I just talked about the 7 guns and 7 coffins.
Yeah, that was cool, but weird. And then one of them put a gun back in a coffin.
I thought for sure that would come up again.
Never addressed.
This is what I was kind of hinting at with the whole you were talking about the Chekhov's acid pit earlier, and I was like, what about the Chekhov's gun that didn't fucking come up again? What about that?
I guess that was on purpose.
I guess they're putting it in its grave because it's dead now.
I don't know when Chekhov wrote about a gun.
Neither do I, honestly. I just know that if you have a gun, it has to get fired. But if you have 7 guns, I guess they don't all have to get fired. But if you have 1 acid pit, it better get used. Oh my gosh. Okay. The psychiatrist suggests that everybody goes to their rooms, and anybody that comes out of their room is saying that they're guilty. If we all stay in our rooms and we're all innocent, then we just wait out the night. And let's all protect ourselves with our guns.
Yeah, let's take our guns now.
And there might be a murderer here. I'm looking at Frederick over here. And so all of you protect yourselves in case Frederick comes around. He pretty much immediately comes out of his room, though.
Yeah, somebody tries to open his door, and we're kind of from the psychiatrist's perspective, which is strange because the big reveal that we are alluding to. He walks into the dead body's room, and she's alive, and they're like secret lovers. Mm-hmm. Big twist. Big twist.
Big twist. It's like, it went great, Annabelle. It's the perfect crime.
10 minutes left.
Yeah,
we get the twist.
Pretty solid. This movie is just very tight. It's just on a roll.
They really explain it. It's like the end of an old comic book that in one panel had to be like, she's like, this apparatus I'm wearing under my garment allowed me to be hung earlier. And he's like, yes. Okay, they explain their plan, and it's a plan that they did purposefully. They specifically wanted to bring Nora to a point of hysteria.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. To where she would be so confident that Vincent Price killed his wife.
Yeah.
Because there was another detail. We're blowing through it. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But at one point, Nora was strangled.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm sure it was Vincent Price.
Yeah, but in the dark downstairs somewhere,
It must have been the psychiatrist.
Yes, exactly. It was him, and he was like, he explains it quickly in the scene. He's like, it was so dark down there, she's still sure that it must have been Frederick, because everybody's so suspicious of Frederick. It was the doctor all along, and Annabelle Lorin. It turns out that Frederick Lorin was right, that Annabelle was going to try to kill him. She already tried to kill him before, apparently, by poisoning him. Mm-hmm. That gets brought up early in the film. It turns out that yes, Annabelle is behind it all, and so is David Trent, the guy who this whole time has been like, I don't think there's any ghosts here.
Right.
I don't think y'all have to worry about ghosts this evening. Which is
Right. Yeah, and
pretty.
he was pretending. He was making. Was he? How was he slamming all the doors?
Well, some of those doors were slammed by. Um. God.
Right. There might be ghosts.
There
Okay.
might.
Let's not get too far ahead of
There
ourselves.
might be some ghosts in this
The
movie.
movie, reveals that these two are behind it, and so you're supposed to kind of feel like, oh, none of it. There aren't ghosts. But
Right.
then we go back down to the acid room
For
basement.
sure. But one of the ways they get Nora really scared is that they do this crazy thing where
Oh yeah,
after
this was
Annabelle.
my favorite part.
Yeah, yeah, we have to talk about this real quick. After Annabelle has been, quote unquote, murdered, her quote unquote ghost floats outside the window of Nora's room. And it's a really, like, effectively done shot for 1959.
Oh
It
yeah.
reminds me of a famous shot from Salem's Lot, which we probably don't have any reason to talk about for quite some time. Moving on.
And you're not gonna do it here.
I'm not. But there's a certain shot that is similar in that film. I will say that much.
Well, I did love it here. The rope is like coming into the room and wrapping around Nora's feet.
Right. It's wrapping around her heels, and clearly, like, they pull the rope and then they rewind it to make it look like.
Then they use the other like they kind of they used the normal footage. They used everything they had.
Exactly. I mean, it's a very for a budget film. It's one location, and they use it the best they can. They plaster cobwebs over everything. There's fancy posters hanging up. There's big vases. It all looks great, except when they cut to the exterior of the house, when
Over and over.
it just looks like a house in L.A. It looks like one of those fort houses in L.A.
I didn't mind. I didn't mind. You even get a city view at the beginning. Lance, the pilot man, is looks over the skyline.
That's true. That's nice.
I liked that.
It's mostly a pretty well-made movie, honestly, for all of its little cracks showing and some things that have aged and reused footage. But they made something pretty solid on a low budget here, and because it did so well when it came out, it later inspired Alfred Hitchcock to do Psycho.
Really?
Yes, it could be a similarly low-budget affair.
It's all about the money.
Yeah, for sure. And this is maybe a good place, briefly, to bring up that this is a William Castle film. William Castle, of course, proliferated in these kinds of gimmicky, almost B movies. Some of them certainly are B movies, but I think this one's a little better than a B movie. It's kind of a classy mystery. With all that being said, William Castle had this thing he used to do with his movies. They were gimmick films in that.
Yeah, you described it as that at the beginning of the video. What does that mean?
Yeah, during the film in theaters, when people would go and see them, William Castle movies would have something called emergo, right? And because this movie breaks the fourth wall a little bit too, in a sense, like, some of the horror can come out of the screen. So for certain movies, things would fly out at the audience, basically.
Like what? What kind of stuff?
During this movie, for instance, when the skeleton is utilized, which is a real human skeleton, once again, we have a real human skeleton as a prop in a film. When that is brought up out of the acid in the scene that we're about to talk about, a skeleton was flown out in front of the audience on wires and then kind of reeled back in to shock them all.
Well, that seems completely jarring to my movie watching experience, but
Well, luckily we didn't have to have
yeah, it didn't happen in my space.
in our screenings. Yeah, if I really wanted you to have a true to 1959 experience, maybe I would have.
You would have set that up for me.
Yeah, I would have flown out a skeleton.
Yeah. I don't think I would have appreciated that as much as
No.
you would have, ended up hoping after all that effort. You would be like, I really hope Vernon likes this. And it just wouldn't have gone over well.
For a ghost to set it up, for William Castle to set it up is one thing, but for me,
Yeah. How are you going to tie the strings?
it's going to be tough, let me tell you. I'm glad I checked in first.
Yeah, always ask me before you surprise me. For sure.
The final scene.
These two, the psychiatrist man and Vincent Price's wife, successfully get Nora to the point of hysteria in which she goes to the basement with her gun and Vincent Price shows up and she doesn't waste any time and she shoots him.
And that's their plan. That's David Trent and Annabelle's plan. They're like,
it worked perfectly.
She's like, it's the perfect crime. And apparently they're fucking right. Like, it all sounds a little convoluted in my head when they say it out loud. Like, we're going to get this girl so scared that she's going to shoot him for us. And we just got to make sure that they're both in the cellar at the same time. And, it's a lot. But
so I think she leaves, and out of a door comes psychiatrist man, and he rolls Vincent Price up to the edge of the acid pit, and then we cut to black, and we hear a male scream, as I will describe it. And so then we cut to the perspective of our once murdered wife of Vincent Price, Annabelle, who did great. I loved her. I thought she was one of the best in the movie.
Oh yeah.
We're like in her perspective, and at that point the movie, she comes into the dark basement, and I felt like we were about to get the real ghost reveal, like to the fact that they were going to reveal, okay, yeah, we're the ones who planned all this. Okay, now
right.
The people who planned it are going to actually see real ghosts. And so she goes up to the acid pit, and from it floats out Skeleton, who's credited and has an IMDb page.
Yes,
as Skeleton.
I also saw this in the credits. It says Skeleton played by himself. Yeah, a real human skeleton. Like, that's how you know it. Yeah.
Very good, Vincent Price. I'm sure Vincent Price was in charge of all of the decisions of this movie. That's how people look at Vincent Price things.
Right.
But the skeleton starts talking with Vincent Price's voice, and I was like, the ghost, me, was like, oh no, Vincent Price is dead. He's talking as the skeleton. Oh no, because I thought it was like, this is what the movie is trying to say is real. It is happening.
Oh.
This ghost is floating out.
They got you.
And I believe what is happening as the best the movie could do, but apparently.
For sure. I did think for a second.
There's a double twist. There's a third twist.
He comes out. He's been marionetting. He was marionetting the skeleton.
Yeah, you can see the strings, but you're meant to. It's actually on purpose.
It's on purpose, apparently. Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's the skeleton of Dr. David Trent. I don't think that's
That's right.
So I don't know how
he set those strings up real fast.
Yeah, there's a moment where he brings it back and touches it, and I'm like, shouldn't that still be dripping with acid?
Don't think about the acid.
Be careful, Frederick. They splash things in it, and nobody moves their shoes back. They're all pretty casual about the acid.
Before Vincent Price walks out of the darkness with the marionette machine, Annabelle is so frightened at the sight of the skeleton that she screams and slowly backs up.
Right.
And almost falls into the acid, but catches herself, but then continues to back up, scream, and fall into the acid ultimately. So both of the conspirators, maybe you would call them,
die by acid.
All in the acid.
And it pays off. She has a great scream. Her face, in particular, is really, really good in that scene.
Yeah.
But she's dead. Dr. David Trent is dead. Everybody else comes downstairs, and by the way, there's a part where Lance Schroeder is like, I'm gonna save the day to Nora, and then
Lance the pilot.
Yeah, Lance the pilot. and he immediately walks behind a wall that opens up, and it shuts behind him, and he gets trapped there
For the rest of the
for the
movie.
rest of the movie.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Get him out of here.
That is good. So he comes back at the end, though, with everyone else. And they're all like, "Where's Nora? Where's Nora?" And she comes running into the room, like she always does, to be like, "Something scary happened. You have to believe me." And she's like, "I shot Frederick Lauren." And so they go downstairs, and guess what? Frederick Lauren's not shot. Just like always, anytime she says something's going on, they show up, and that's not what's cooking.
Yeah, that is true.
But he basically has like an ending monologue where he's like, "Well, now I can tell you all. My wife and Dr. Trent were planning to kill me, but now..." What does he say exactly?
He says, Dr. Psychiatrist Man fell.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so did she.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable letting the justice system determine my guilt. And he walks off.
Yeah, basically.
It was good.
That's I'm guilty energy right there that he's giving.
Yeah.
To be fair, they both were trying to kill him. But also, he was pretty bad the whole time. To her and everyone, pretty much. Like, as a guy, Vincent Price is pretty cool. You can't take that away from him. But Frederick Lauren is just like mean and smarmy and didn't care if any of these people die.
Yeah, maybe he deserves, the justice system instead of a quick acid bath. But nobody deserves acid bath.
Right.
He didn't put the acid bath there. Nobody put it there. It was one of those things.
Well, he definitely killed David Trent, whether you would chalk that up to
self-defense because he was being dragged to the acid pit.
For sure. He was being dragged to the acid pit.
I don't mean to be defending his evil character. They could have all been acided, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess Annabelle didn't have to fall backwards into the acid pit.
No, the skeleton, he pulled the marionette string and it kind of gave her one final tap, I remember.
For sure.
It was very deliberate.
He wanted to scare her into it. Like,
he needs to get the jury's opinion on whether or not him using the skeleton, David Trent, the Dr. Psychiatrist skeleton.
But basically, he walks out.
Yes.
He walks out, and Watson Pritchard, the owner, he comes to the acid pit, and he, looks in it, and he's like, "There are 9 now, and they're coming for me." And there's, you hear chains dragging, and then he looks right at the camera, and he goes, "And they could be coming for you, too." Ooh.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 ending, really.
That's how it ends. It's so...
There were no chains.
Oh, well, maybe a ghostly noise or something.
Yeah, but it never came out. It never came up in...
Oh, you mean there were chains in the sound
physical
background, but we never saw any chains or anything. Yeah, maybe there are ghosts. The ending certainly implies that there could still be something supernatural going on here. Maybe it's just like what he said, where, none of the murders in this house have been normal. They've all been kind of crazy and violent, and that's definitely what happened here. So maybe there is some kind of ghostly curse, and this house is absorbing the ghosts of people and inspiring them to violently murder each other. What do you think about that?
I think that is what the movie is trying to allude to at the end.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now most of the murders in the house have been done by acid bath.
That's true. So they've lost points on uniqueness
across the board.
Yeah. I guess it's hard to top, so you might as well.
Yeah, just keep going to that pool.
I guess it's hard to get the acid out of there, or I don't know. Do you think...
What are you gonna do?
Maybe Frederick Lauren filled it in again? I don't know. Something to think about. Hey, Vernon, do you have any cool dates for this film?
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking. That's a reference to our famous segment on dates. Yes, I do. I like numbers, and I also don't like numbers. And one of my least favorite numbers is 59. This movie came out in 1959.
For sure.
The book that there is not one for this movie, but the book The Haunting of Hill House also came out in 1959.
That's correct. So that's, not to be confused with.
Specifically to be confused with for monetary gain is why it was called that, 100%.
For sure.
And so those are two 59s, but they are outweighed by the presence of your favorite number, which is what, Jonathan?
27.
27.
Right.
So many times. All right, get ready. Vincent Price was born on May 27th. That's one. Okay. We have the lady who was Vincent Price's wife, Annabelle.
Carol O'Mart.
Yeah, born in 1927.
Very cool.
Lance the Pilot Man, also born in 1927. Nora, born October 27th. The same day as Ghostbusters director, because that's the day we started the channel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to forget any of these dates for the rest of my ghostly life.
Well, especially not that one.
Especially not that one. And there's a couple other, but I like that number too. That's the end of my dates. No, lots of 27s.
I like it.
A couple 59s. Nothing else came out in theaters at the same time. Historically, Footloose came out on the same day, which was February 17th.
Right. Different year, though.
On a different topic, which is somewhat sound related, I forgot to mention earlier, I always keep track of the eating, because eating noises is a thing I am bothered by. This movie has wall-to-wall drinking and putting ice in glass containers and pouring.
Oh, yeah.
But in the most significant way, I can't hammer this point home more, Jonathan. This movie has no eating.
Yeah, that's a plus.
And that's a thing I strive for and search for in the entirety of my afterlife. I mean, holy cow. Congratulations, House on Haunted Hill. You've made a very special list.
Oh, for sure. This movie was a hit, honestly. It's definitely not super scary and kind of funny. Some of that may be intentional, but some of it is certainly just from age. I don't know.
I think it is super scary. I think that the old blind woman does a jump scare.
All right, yeah. There are a couple of shots in the movie that are really effective. And I think people...
And as a kid, if I was a kid back in the day, it would be the scariest thing. And I think it does leave you with the feeling that maybe ghosts were shutting the doors. I don't think anybody was...
Yeah.
I think the chandelier was dropped by ghosts.
Maybe so, yeah.
Nobody was doing that.
Frederick Loren couldn't have planned that. Could he?
I guess so. Nobody was secretly a movie special effects artist. There was no background explanation to why somebody would be... He said there was no electricity, but all the lights flickered ominously.
It's true.
I think there were definitely ghosts.
Some strange happenings for sure.
It was good. I liked it a lot.
Oh yeah. I think it was a big hit. I just love these old horror movies. The really charming black and white old-timey ones. I got a kick out of them. I'm glad you liked it. Well, Vernon.
Oh my gosh.
You want to take us on out of here?
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan. Peace and love, everybody.